Hello, and welcome to Nurtural Disasters. This is a podcast for those of us with toxic or emotionally immature parents. We might not have a bunch of credentials next to our names, but we do have PhDs from the Hard Knocks University. Basically, we want this to be a validating space for adult children of parents who had no business having children.
Welcome to Nurtural Disasters with Ken and Lisa. Hey, Lisa.
Hey, Ken. So guess what?
Chicken butt.
Chicken thigh. I don't know. Oh my God.
There's certain dumb things that you don't outgrow, and that's like one of them. Eventually, if you get old enough and you still like dumb jokes like that, they just call it dad jokes.
Yeah, it involves, but well, you're a kid at heart, so.
I think
Um,
there's a kid in there.
I think there's a kid in there. Oh, speaking of kids, okay, did you grow up watching or like listening to Michael Jackson?
Who didn't? I think everybody I think everybody that grew up like around our era like loved Michael Jackson. I know like the people that are slightly older than us, they actually lived through like the entire prime Michael Jackson solo career.
I know.
We kinda caught, like, what, the kind of
Mm,
well, it was in the
yeah.
middle of it, but we
Mm,
caught more of the decline of Michael Jackson.
yeah, because we're millennials, so we saw the white Michael Jackson.
Well, I think they explained, well, we should bring up why you're mentioning Michael Jackson, shouldn't we?
Well, yeah, because I saw the movie and I was telling you, like, oh my God, it's so good. I loved it. I loved it. Like, I wasn't even gonna go see it. And then my friend said, oh, no, you have to go see it. I was dancing on my seat and people were dancing in the theater and singing along. And I was like, really? What? She's like, no. And I just thought it was like, 'cause some biopics can be kind of corny and you never know like how truthful it is. But then my friend, she sold it so well. She said, like, it's like watching, did you ever like Bohemian Rhapsody? Like the movie that came out, it was years ago. It was pre-pandemic actually. And at the end, they have a Live Aid with Freddie Mercury and you're like literally you feel like you're in Live Aid, the concert from like the mid 80s and it's so fucking cool. And this is very similar to it. And I'm so glad I saw it. I loved it. The music was so good. I'm a fan. I love his music. Like despite of, his personal issues, his music, I'm able to separate the artist from, the art, so to speak. But yeah, I was just I watched it. I liked it. The only part I honestly I didn't like, and I wish they'd put a trigger warning because they did put a trigger warning at the beginning, but it was like people who are photosensitive viewers, and I'm like, there's all these lights.
Yeah, I don't think the photosensitivity part was the thing they should have mentioned only.
I know, because in the beginning, it starts off when he's growing up in Gary, Indiana. Obviously, I don't think there's really no spoilers because everyone knows his story. But Joseph, his father, was very abusive, and they show him beating on him, for just making a misstep while they're rehearsing and whatnot. It's pretty hard to watch. I mean, it's not as bad as like I don't know if you saw 12 Years a Slave.
I did. It's pretty hard to get through.
Oh my God. It's literally like at least 10, 15 minutes of him being whipped. And it's just so, I mean, it's real life, but at the same time, you need to like prepare us. Like, hey, this is going to happen. It's going to trigger some people. It wasn't that bad. I will say that it wasn't that bad, but for it to get like, the American thing, I hate to say it, but like, if it has a lot of violence, PG-13. But if it shows a woman's nipple, holy shit, R. We're just so
Um,
backwards in that way.
what we consider consider adult stuff, it's very perverse because, I think in other countries,
Mhm.
they would think that violence is like the thing that makes it more mature. More violence, more mature audiences. It's like backwards in America.
It's so backwards. I don't get that. And we just have, Americans have like weird hangups about sex and the puritanical culture where it's like it says R, but something super violent and especially violence against children, which I think they need to have some sort of warning, in my opinion. The photosensitive thing I didn't really notice. I'm not like the demographic, I'm sure some people are, but I did, and I thought when I was watching it, I thought, "Oh, I wanna talk about this in the podcast because there's so much that came to my mind while watching it." You know, this super obvious narcissistic family dynamic, and Michael Jackson, in my opinion, I think he might have been the scapegoat child. Joseph, obviously, he was a narcissist. It's super obvious. And I just wonder, 'cause the movie ends in 1988, so it doesn't go into all the other stuff that he went through, you know, with the accusations and
Y
but I did Google some stuff because I just wonder, like, how Michael reconciled, you know, he himself being a father and having I guess he had 3 children. He had the Prince, Paris, and Blanket. That's right. He himself, he made sure I mean, he said this in interviews. There was an interview this is an interview with People magazine that I, like, looked up. He's like, "To this day, I won't lay a finger on my children. I don't want them to ever feel that way about me." So, you can see the movie that he never Joseph, the father, he never allows his kids to call him daddy, and I guess it creates that kind of separation. You know, with a narcissistic parent, you know, they value control over connection, and that's super obvious in the film. So Michael even says, you know, "I wanted to call him daddy so bad." And he's like, "I'm not daddy, I'm Joseph to you." And I guess I don't know if you've heard like a lot of the articles and interviews, but pretty much Michael got the worst of the abuse out of all the children. There were 10 children, actually. You don't see it in the movie, but there's literally 10 of them. They had a lot of kids, and Michael was a very highly sensitive child. And narcissistic parents, I can see them they tune in, especially with a highly sensitive child, they will go after you. They see you as, like, prey. There's a documentary, Living with Michael Jackson, and that came out in, like, 2003. He said, "Oh, I totally forgave Joseph for everything." He still calls him Joseph, not dad. And he did say that, like, that the abuse he suffered did influence the way he approached fatherhood, and, um, it made me realize something. So, like, kids who grow up in abusive homes with abusive parents, I noticed that when they grow up, they are so willing to empathize with their abusive parents and their abusers. But I noticed that the abusive parents or guardians, they're never able to put themselves in their kids' shoes, you know?
Well, you think about it, it's pretty much the old, like, stereotypical narcissist. I don't expect anything less. I feel like if you look at Joe Jackson, if he is a textbook narcissist, I'm pretty sure some people could probably analyze his people with probably, like, professional degrees that could analyze his behavior throughout time. This has been a long, kind of public knowledge about Joe Jackson and how he treated his kids. It's not definitely not something surprising that was in this movie or even the last movie with Michael Jackson. Joe kind of ran his life as kind of the ringleader or manager rather than dad. So he was pretty much dad only by like legality. I think he spent more time just being their manager, right? And because he was their manager and their dad, he could get away with doing stuff like violence, like physical violence and emotional abuse. A lot of people that analyze the relationship between Michael and Joe, that's what they come to a conclusion of. It's like, this is a guy that really I think he saw dollar signs and that was it. He saw
Mhm,
dollar signs and like prestige for himself, that he was able to get all his kids pretty much to one part of the segment of entertainment. You could see it through the movie, especially in the back part. It's a lot of kind of emotional manipulation with Michael, right?
mhm. You're abandoning the family. That is in the movie, yeah. Mhm,
Michael, I think, grew up with a gentle soul, so he could have been. You know, sometimes kids grow up in different ways. Or they end up in different ways being raised the same. Michael could easily been, like, very self-serving and not thought about the other kids and family and
mhm,
try to get out as soon as possible. And, you know, like, at that point, he knew that he could probably get that success because he was seeing it. Like, people were enjoying him as a
mhm,
solo artist. He was making this career for himself, and I'm pretty sure he saw it in a way where, "Oh, this is my chance to escape." Like, I see the crack in the door. If I escape right here, right now, my dad can't do anything to control me anymore because I'm my own man. And to know on the other side of the door, I have a career, I will be successful, I will have money. He can't use that against me. Michael probably thought about that, and he had to
mhm.
weigh that with what Joe told him, right? Your brothers need you. We need you because you're the star of the show. So
Yeah,
Michael kind of put that his career on hold for a bit to appease his dad and kind of made sure his siblings were okay, if you could just drum it up that way.
Yeah, in the movie, it talks about how Joseph totally there was emotional blackmail that he played on him because his single as a solo artist was number 1. It just he was, like, the number 1 artist in the fucking universe, and he wanted to do his own thing, and Joseph was like, "You're abandoning the family," the typical emotional blackmail, because he knew that Michael his temperament we talked about temperament in the last one of the or second to last episode of, like, how do some kids turn out some ways and some kids turn out other ways. I think with Michael's temperament, from what we know, being a highly sensitive child, he was probably very empathetic and felt a lot of guilt, right? So his dad knew, oh, if I could just make him feel guilty that, you're going to solo? What about you're going to let your siblings starve? You're just going to kicking them by the wayside, leaving them high and dry or whatever. And, of course that it made him feel so guilty to the point where it was you didn't see the movie. Let me just clarify that, like, for the listeners, you did not see it, I went to see it, and I wanted to talk about it. You pretty much right, Ken, you already know his story. I mean, everyone knows it, but for me, it was more as a fan of his music. I thought I would enjoy that, but also there was a lot of for me, it was very enlightening about the family dynamics. It was like a refresher, right? And I thought, "Oh, it just made a lot of sense to me." One thing you brought up, Ken, was that I'm very surprised that there are not a lot of mental health professionals who have made videos about this dynamic, specifically about this movie, but maybe because it's too obvious. But for me, you're talking about Joseph. To me, I'm going to say 100% he's a narcissist, and let me tell you why, okay? So, his the way how manipulative he is, not just the emotional blackmail with his son, but the way he manipulates to get into the music industry, which is super fucking cutthroat. I mean, if anybody who's ever been tangentially related to the music industry or know someone who's in the music industry, you see that it is like fucking dog eat dog bad. Like that level of like, you have to be the most ruthless person or super lucky for that reason. But like, you're surrounded by the most like psychopathic people. I can see, and someone like Joseph, that motherfucker's ruthless. And he's gonna do whatever it takes to make it to the top. He'll have to lie, kill, cheat, steal, whatever. We've seen people like Diddy. These people thrive in environments like that. And it's funny because I was talking to friends about this movie and they go, oh, this is a watered down version of Joseph. He was actually way worse in real life. And it's not just me saying it because Paris, she did not promote the movie. She says this, it's a fiction, it's fantasy, whatever. And she says it's a watered down version, make it more palatable for a family friendly audience, which is weird, with everything we see, like how is this family friendly? And Joseph this is just rumors, but from other people told me, he had affairs behind his wife's back. He would sleep with groupies with a promise of like, oh, you can meet the Jacksons, allegedly. These are rumors, but I wouldn't put it past him. You could see it. He's just a sleazy person. And the way he treated Michael is so heartbreaking. And the constant criticism, you could see how it takes a toll on Michael of not being good enough and created body dysmorphia. Obviously, like it's an eating disorder, but Michael never mentions it, but it's pretty obvious. And it was really interesting. And I wanted to talk to you about this, Ken, both of us having narcissistic parents. And also, it would probably relate a lot to, so there was this interview with Michael's father. I guess he passed away a few years ago, right before COVID, I want to say. He was being interviewed by Larry King Live, and Larry King actually brought it up. He put him on blast and said, you abused your kids and whatever. And he asked him point blank, did you make any mistakes? And he's like, no, I raised Michael properly. And actually, when I saw that interview, I thought, oh, of course he doesn't. He doesn't think he did anything wrong because it's like the ends justify the means, and narcissists live in their own delusion. They're so fucking delusional.
So let's just call it like I love that new term, delulu. It
No
pretty
cap.
much
On
yeah.
gang. On
But
gang.
but okay, stop.
Demure.
Yeah, but the delulu is like my favorite kind of like made up word made from a real word. But that is true. Like this guy is textbook, right? Have you ever met any kind of narcissist that wasn't so self-aware that still kind of have that narcissistic behavior, admit to that they did anything wrong?
Mm.
If that happened, like,
Oh,
if that happened, I think a
that's
lot of problems would be solved, right, Lisa? If, like, your mom just burst through the door, like the Kool-Aid man, just be like, "Lisa, I'm so sorry. I know what I did wrong." Like, that's never gonna happen.
mm-mm,
Never gonna happen, never gonna happen. My dad's not gonna admit that he did anything wrong. He might
mhm.
admit it to himself, maybe in the dark or something in his room, maybe like, "I think I fucked up, but I can't my kids can't know this." I'm not telling them. He's not gonna let us know. Joe is like the stereotypical. I don't even wanna say like he's like a pimp, but it's kinda like he's like a carny. He's like a carnival barker. His kids are part of the show. He's like that old sleazy guy. Always reminds me, remember Disney's Pinocchio? If you ever watched Disney's Pinocchio, you see those, like,
Yes.
the people that kinda, like, kidnap him and put him in that show?
They
That
trafficked
reminds
him. It's child
Yeah,
trafficking. That's
yeah,
such a
yeah,
weird
yeah, yeah.
movie.
By the
It's
way,
fucked up.
the only way Joe got away with this, doing this to his kids, is because they were his kids. There's just something about, hey, if he was anybody else, like their agent or manager, and he wasn't their dad, this guy would have been in prison, right?
Mhm,
Maybe he wouldn't have been in prison in the '70s and the '80s, but he would have been in prison, like, in the 2000s. Like, but once people found out that this is what he did to his kids, like, he would have been in prison if it wasn't his kids. There's just something about, well, he's a tough dad, and that's always, like, a thing where people view there's any kind of, like, a black families that's out there, and there's kind of, like, a cultural thing too, right? With how some black parents raise their kids, especially during that time period.
mhm,
Um, Especially in the Midwest and the South. Like, I've heard stories from my friends who grew up in that kind of family, and it's not like to a beating of Joe Jackson to his kids, but it's definitely there is some, there's some spanking, maybe like a stick somehow, but it is like a cultural thing. I think Joe probably grew up around that himself, so but it doesn't excuse that behavior, does it? Like,
mhm,
like Michael, all the other kids were pretty much his commodities,
mhm.
that he was trying to sell.
Exactly.
And he was yeah, and really, he was lucky that Michael was he kinda had that heart that not everyone's gonna be like that. Michael coulda easily had that success and totally looked for revenge. He didn't,
Mhm.
which is commendable, but I'm like, if it was me and or you our dad was Joe Jackson and we somehow got out of his clutches, you don't think we're gonna try to do something to him? But that's just us, so
Maybe. Okay, so there's something really interesting. So online there's Julie Tice. She talks about she does like these mostly celebrities, these psychological profiles on them. She says something really interesting that's like I let me know if you agree with this or not, Ken. And I'm really interested to know what you think. So it's like if you have one abusive parent, you actually have two abusive parents because, seemingly the safe parent, quote unquote, allowed it to happen. I know you didn't watch the movie, but in the movie, the mom, Catherine, she apologizes to Michael, and he's in the hospital. He had his hair burned off when he was filming the Pepsi commercial. His hair caught on fire. He's in the hospital, like his scalp burned off, and it was supposed to be very painful because a lot of nerves were exposed, and he had to be like pilled up, and it was just a really horrific experience. And Catherine's by his side and just apologizing to him. She's like, "This is all my fault. I'm so sorry I let this happen. I let him just bully you into doing this tour with that you did not want to do with your siblings." And you know what Michael says? He goes, "Mom, it's not your fault." He's so forgiving to her. And it shows his heart, but at the same time, I think now what we know now, right? Catherine was somehow complicit, I want to say, for her to sit back and allow all this stuff to happen to her children. Because all of the children, they were mistreated. You know, let's just say that, right?
yeah, let's not
Let's
sugarcoat
just sugarcoat it.
it.
Right. Exactly. Some got it worse than others, sure. But I don't what do you think of Catherine's as the passive parent or the quote unquote safe parent? Like what do you have to say about that? Because I have so many conflicting feelings, and I don't know exactly if I would be able to articulate it, you know?
Well, if you look at a family dynamic, it's like if one of the parents is abusive, that the old adage that the person that's enabling it is equally as complicit, as guilty as the one that causes that pain, right? Because they could easily just step in and try to curb that behavior. But I have some compassion for her because you, as kind of like the housewife, kind of during that family dynamic, it's tough to stand up for your kids in that situation. I mean, we could easily have been talking about a story where Joe beats his wife to death, right? That didn't happen, but I could understand her fear. Or and also that just that idea of being kinda, like, helpless towards this guy that has, like, kinda, like, abusive to the kids, and I'm pretty sure he was abusive to her, so I don't think it's like a "I'm only abusive to the kids" kinda thing. I'm if this guy's abusive, he's probably abusive to everybody, right? He's shifting his weight around, "I'm the patriarch of the house, you're the woman of the house, you have no say in this. I'm their manager, I'm doing what's best for them." And if you get years upon that, I'm like, you as the mother, what could you possibly do other than take your kids away, right?
Mhm.
That's the thing you hope the woman does in this situation. If you're being abused, woman or man, that you end up being the person to walk away. But when you have that many kids, could you take all of them with you in that situation? It's tough. It's easy to say that, hey, she should have took the kids away or she should have stepped up to him. But then we could easily be talking about another story, how Joe Jackson killed his wife.
Mhm.
That's really easily could have been another,
Mhm.
maybe in the we we've been watching a lot of movies about multiverses and stuff like that. That could easily been in a other multiverse. Like his Michael
Right.
Jackson's mom talked back to Joe Jackson, and Michael never had the opportunity to say, "Hey, that's okay, mom. I forgive you," in the hospital because his mom's dead. But who
Oh,
knows?
yeah.
But it's easy to say at that point, but until you're in that kind of, like, family dynamic and you're the housewife and you have to deal with that, oh, man, it's easy to say that she coulda just done this or that, but it's like 20/20 hindsight at that point.
I know what you mean. I feel very ambivalent because so Catherine, and okay, on one hand, she is a victim herself, especially a victim of the times, being a housewife and all those kids. And then there was like, there's just not a lot of acknowledgement. But at the same time, if I, like personally, like if I saw somebody mistreating my own child, that person would not live to see the next day. Let's just say that, right? But you know what? Hey, you want to hear something weird? Okay, so you know how the Jackson family, Catherine was a Jehovah's Witness, and it reminded me of the movie Selena. I know it's so fucking
Oh
random.
god.
Okay,
That's a movie that's also tough to watch too.
so Selena's family, they were also Jehovah's Witnesses. I'm not shitting on Jehovah's Witnesses. I've known people who are Jehovah's Witnesses. They seem really very nice people, very kind. But I just saw the parallels, right? I don't know if you saw the movie Selena with J-Lo.
Yeah.
That was a great movie. J-Lo fucking killed, right? I don't know if you heard the rumor was that so when Selena was shot, when they took her to the hospital, the family basically said, "We refuse for her to have a blood transfusion because we're Jehovah's Witnesses and it's against her religion." And that would have saved her, right? So this has been a rumor for like years and years in the Latino community. But, just like the last few years, her family's like, no, she had already lost so much blood by the time she got to the hospital. Of course, it would have been like, yeah, she could have had a blood transfusion. But I see a lot of parallels with, like, the patriarchal family dynamics. He was just very I think you can almost see, like, I wouldn't say as bad. No, he was definitely not as bad as Joseph, but he did have that ruthlessness, and that's why his kids were able to advanced. I mean, he put his kids like the same way as Joseph. After school, you're gonna practice, and after practice, you're gonna go to a show, do a show at some nightclub, and then you're gonna wake up with barely any sleep. You're gonna go to school, and then you're gonna come home, practice again, so you could go to like that level of like working your kid to death to you succeed and like live vicariously through them. Um, you kind of like again, you need that personality to persevere. And Catherine being a Jehovah's Witness herself, there's a lot of internalized misogyny because from what I know about Jehovah's Witnesses, they're an interesting bunch. I remember having friends when I was a kid in school who were Jehovah's Witnesses, and they had to like leave the classroom for like when it was like a Christmas celebration or a birthday celebration because they don't believe in that. It's just uh, let's just say it's different, right? I'm not shitting on it. I'm just saying it's different. And I know they're very patriarchal, and for her to internalize a lot of the super hyper patriarchal, misogynistic ideals, I can see why she's like, "Oh, my husband, he's just doing because he's the head of the household. He's just
Well,
doing what
yeah.
God ordained or whatever."
Well, not just that, it's like, think about the time she grew up in. You grow up during that time being a housewife, what options do you have at that point when you have that many kids and you live in the Midwest, you live in Indiana? It's like, what kind of opportunities are there for housewives in Indiana? Wouldn't it be interesting to kind of, like, wonder what would happen if Michael and his siblings grew up during our time and they maybe, like, started getting popular on TikTok or YouTube or something like that, and Jackson was just popular right now. Um,
Mhm,
let's say Catherine was raising her kids in the '90s, where there were way more options for a woman, at least career-wise, right? Our world has really changed since then in those decades. Before, you would think, "Oh, yeah, housewife, you're stay at home." That's totally possible back then. Not now, everybody has to work now. So, would it be different if we lived in another world where Michael Jackson was in his prime right now, and he
mhm,
grew up in the '90s, a kid of the '90s, if he's just like a millennial? Would his mom have kept him there? Or would she have been like, "You know what? I have my options. I could easily just take the kids. And you know
mhm,
what? I know Michael and some of the other siblings, Janet, Jermaine, they're good enough to stand on their own. And you know what? I just have to give them a safe space and they're ready. I could just, you know what, drive them to the studio. They're ready, have a lot of interest. We don't need you, Joe, after a while, right?
mhm.
I think if this was a different time period, it would definitely showed. I think it would have been different. I think it's something that also transcends religion. It's a lot about just growing up in the Midwest and the South during that time, being like lower middle class or just middle class during that time. Like your options are as a woman, I don't think are you don't have a lot of options at that point. Being a woman of color, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
Ye
so
yes.
so
Mhm.
I think
Yeah.
you know, Lisa, it's I think we've lived in a time where we still see, the power dynamics between men and women, between races and stuff like that. But it's a thing where we could, look at it, be like, well, we could try to transcend that. Whereas people that lived back then a couple decades ago, there's no way out.
That's a really good point because, women couldn't even have their own credit card until, like, the early 1970s, right?
I know,
So
it's like, we kind of because we sometimes forget, we take it for granted, right?
mhm,
We've lived a while where we kind of see like men having jobs, women would end up making more money, and now the talk is about, oh man, now men don't like that women are making more money than them or being more successful, right? There was a
mhm,
time where it's like, oh man. I wish my wife would work because we're really running out of money a little bit. If she get a part-time job somewhere at the supermarket, that'll be great because we're getting stretched really thin. And that was the conversation back then. Now it's different conversation, right? And
mhm.
I think it really is. It's like her options were different. Like her options were way different. Does that give her a pass? It's tough. It's tough because
It's
you as a
so
colored
tough.
woman during that time and you had that many kids and it's hard when you're living with a narcissist. It's not he's not only Joe's not only affecting the kids. He's affecting his wife too. So they're all under his thumb. So
Mhm,
if you get enough of that, you just end up defeated. You're just in survival mode at that point. You just
mhm.
don't want to be like, you know what? I don't want to piss off Joe and have him go on one of these tantrums. So it's really tough to say. It's you know what it is? It's easy for us to say.
Yes. Yeah. Uh, I it's so complicated, but it's a really good discussion to have. With Catherine, I do feel compassion for her, but at the same time, she's not absolved from culpability.
Definitely
So,
not.
eh, hmm, it's like you said, it's tough, but it makes you think, okay, some like Michael, he broke the cycle, which is pretty obvious. Maybe being a scapegoat child or the highly sensitive child, he was able to break the cycle because he says, he said he'd never laid a finger on his children. And from what I know, from what his kids have said, he was not abusive to them. But something interesting that I read, allegedly. So, Jafar Jackson, who was Michael Jackson's nephew, who portrayed Michael to like fucking perfection. Literally from the voice to like the dancing, everything. I thought I was literally seeing Michael myself, like that level. He was so good. Well, his father's Jermaine. He married a Colombian woman. And so Jermaine, he himself is known for being abusive. And from what I've read, he beat up one of his partners and abused them, and allegedly hit his own children. So Jermaine, he's had his issues with violence, and he perpetuated the cycle. Someone like Michael was able to break it. And it doesn't surprise me that there was violence, especially like in the Black community, because if you go far back enough, if you see like from like the slave days and the beatings. I was in New Orleans back in December, and I don't know if you ever gone to New Orleans and been to their plantation tours, Ken?
That part I didn't go to.
I mean, it's super historical, how can you not? But it talks about how the violence, and I can see.
Because to me, it's painful.
Yeah,
I'm not even Black, and it's painful
yeah.
to trying to look at that. One thing I would bring up, I remember, growing up, and if you grow up in LA, that's one benefit you have. But I remember, growing up, and we had speakers from Japanese Americans who were interned during World War II, and they
Oh,
would.
Manzanar, the
Yeah,
Manzanar, yeah.
so we talked a lot about Manzanar, and it's just painful, right? And it's like the weirdest thing, right? All the kids there, I don't think any of us were Japanese American, but we looked at that and was like, we felt so bad for them. And we're like, we're asking questions that what 3rd, 4th graders would ask them. It was like, wait, they just took away everything and put you in a camp because you were Japanese? And they're pretty much like, yep, that's pretty much what it was. And you know what? Just you could tell their pain. It's over, but you could if
Mhm,
you see things that you embody their pain. I think that's the thing about it. You look
mhm,
at it and you just see history. If you see history and it's not good history, it's like it talks about a lot of pain such as slavery and plantations and, like, people
mhm,
being interned and people getting killed, and you're like, you don't feel anything towards that, there might be something wrong with you. I'm just saying. I think that's why I didn't wanna go because it's like, "Oh, that's painful
mhm.
to watch." Didn't you know what kind of.
You know what? That's so fair. Uh, yeah, I've actually been to how many 3 plantations in Louisiana. I've been to New Orleans a couple of times, and it's a great city. I love New Orleans, so fun, and the French Quarter, but I it makes you realize, okay, that's why this violence, once it starts, this cycle just continues. It's like I was talking about Julie Tice earlier. There's this blueprint that gets created or imprinted in you as a child. And this blueprint, you would just keep recreating our trauma.
The one to break it. Yeah, the one to break it, yeah.
Exactly. And to see like some more plantations, especially I heard the sugar plantations were very violent towards the slaves. And that's why allegedly, well, they say, how New Orleans is like the number one murder capital of the states. It's because it stems back to these sugar plantations that were super, super violent. And your brain just normalizes it as a way to cope with it. And it just gets passed down from one generation to the next. Right? And I see it, and I could see it just kinda it trickled all the way fucking down to Joseph Jackson, right? And the way he treated his children and the way and it's not just endemic to the Black community because you see a lot of violence in, for example, like the Latino community. With my mom, my mom's mom, my grandmother had 12 children, very Catholic, very religious, and my grandfather, he was very abusive, and she even told me one time when I was a little kid in Mexico City, and she's like, "Your grandfather, he came home drunk one day, and he tried to hit me," and she's like, "I grabbed" I don't know if it was like a pan or something like that, and I said, "If you ever fucking touch me, I'll do this is to you," and I was just like I was a little kid, and I was like, "Oh, okay," and, I've heard a lot of stories about, like, my mom and her siblings just being beat with, like, electrical cords and whatever was on hand that my grandfather, like, he came home from work and he was just angry and exhausted and, like and it's funny because they would call him, like they never used the word Jekyll and Hyde, but they say, like, the public persona he pointed out that, oh, he was so overly accommodating and so nice to people in the public, but when he came home, he was very abusive to his children. And it's interesting because, when I talk to my uncle, who I am close with, and he does live in the States, he has never laid a hand on his daughter. He is the complete opposite of corporal punishment because he says, okay, and he even told me this that was super interesting. Okay, it's okay to okay, so if you hit your spouse, if you hit your dog, if you hit anybody else, it's considered abuse. But when you hit a child, it's considered discipline. One adult cannot hit another adult, but you can hit a child who's not an innocent, who's defenseless, does not understand. it's like he gets it, and he's a cycle breaker himself. I know he's very philosophical. He's very intelligent. I'm very close with him, and I get that. Unfortunately, my mom was not the type, the stereotypical like la chancla, with her flip flop. Okay, I know you're laughing. Oh my god,
Uh,
everyone. I'm sure a lot of people can relate. Like the chancla, or she would use the belt on us, and she would call it el amigo, her friend.
that's just ooh, that's just warped behavior right there.
Right? And it's like, and it's the thing, and it's weird, and you think about it, and I do have to say what people, like, in the Latino community say, "La chancla," I will say this, that thing can turn corners, okay? It's a
Well,
fucking
yeah, Latino moms know how to freaking curve that little slipper.
oh, it's like a ninja star, or like
Yeah.
have you ever
It's
said, like yeah, like a heat-seeking missile, like,
yeah,
it's like I swear to God it's fucking alive. I swear to God.
it's all in the wrist.
It what the fuck is up with it? It's crazy.
You're essentially throwing, like, a little odd shape like Frisbee or, like, boomerang.
Boomerang, ninja
Yeah.
star.
Yeah, it's a flick, and, anger plus, I don't know, years of, cultural, know-how just makes it a dangerous weapon.
Right? That could be a clip. I could totally see that as being a clip for this episode of where it's like, oh, it's like the Ninja Star heat-seeking missile. You can put like a video
Put some
of the
flames on
chunk
it.
of the chunk climb, and it's just like it turns the
Believe me
corner.
believe me, if you ever looked on TikTok and, like, YouTube Shorts, there's so many skits about chanclas,
I
like, just
know,
freaking aiming, like, for some reason, just being the most accurate things ever, being thrown from their mother's hand.
dude. I don't know if your parents ever did that with the chancla or the belt, or was just yell at
No,
you.
my parents, I think my mom, it was, the blinds and stuff, and, there's like a little, like a stick that you turn it and it closes and open the blinds and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of them broke off, and, my mom used to chase me around with it. I remember, I think my mom told my sister one time when I was like a kid, and she was like, "All you have to do is hit him on the hand one time, and then he'll never do it again." And really, my parents didn't really hit me that much. It's really the threat of hitting me because of that one time. So I could not say like I was an abused kid, at least not physically. Emotionally, that I think it's different. They got me
Okay.
the other way. So,
Mm.
um, I think, yeah, my mom used to discipline me with that stick that, from the blinds. And I remember it. I just remember kids remember certain things. Usually anything that's really traumatic or really like memorable, like exciting in a way, they'll remember it. And that's one of my memories I had when I was like a kid. Um, is that a good or a bad thing? You decide.
I don't think just the threats, like, you should do something because you know it's a good thing. Like, good parents it's funny because I've seen good parents firsthand recently, new parents, millennial Gen Z parents. And the way they're able to get their kids to behave, it's really interesting because it was just like, "Okay, no screen time tonight." And of course, the kids will scream and stuff, but they'll realize, "Okay, all you have to do is take something away, but you don't have to hit them to get them to understand." Like, it's just so barbaric. And you know what's weird, Ken? So, like, with my dog, for example, I've never really hit her. Like, I don't she's my baby, and I don't so the only time that I ever did, like, corporal punishment on her, okay, so, like, there's one time I think she had something in her mouth and I was trying to get out, so she just, like, grit her teeth at me and tried to, like, snap at my fingers, like, try to bite it, because I was just trying to get something out of her mouth, and someone told me, tap her nose," so she knows, like, her little snout, so she knows not to do it anymore. So I tapped her snout, and when I did that, it wasn't even hard or anything, but I tapped it to, like, "No, that's not good. That's not you don't do that." And I felt so guilty. I felt so bad. I'm like, "Oh my god, I abused my dog." I used PCA, the arms of the angel, like, I could hear Sarah McLachlan singing at me, like, "You horrible." And, like, that was, like, the extent of my corporal punishment with my dog, but I've never, like, hit my dog. I had this one roommate, she had this dog called Mima, right? This bigger dog, and the dog would get so excited to see her when she would come home that my roommate hated the fact that she piddled, that the dog Mima piddled, that she would start spanking the dog, like hitting it, and the dog would get so scared that the dog would pee again. And I'm like, "What the fuck?" I didn't really say anything, I was really young, I was, like, maybe 18 at the time, but, like, for me, it's an involuntary response, that just happens. I know that now, but even if I were that age at that time, I'd be like, "It just happens, whatever. The dog's just excited to see me, that's just their reaction." But I just can't see myself hitting my dog. It's just, like, the concept of, like, animal abuse or child abuse is just so beyond me. Oh, I hate it. I hate reading about it. I hate seeing it on the news. I hate it.
Well, Lisa, you know how I am. I think my weaknesses are like animals and little kids.
Mhm.
I if there I seriously, if there's any situation where someone's like abusing their kid outright or abusing their dog in public, I think I'm gonna get into altercation because at what point could you abuse something being more helpless, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, abuse like a person or like an animal, and these are, souls that can't protect themselves, and
Mhm.
at what point you're like, "Okay, they get the point, you gotta stop." And the thing about it is, you know what? I get mad when people are just, like, mean to their pets. For me, it's a bad thing. I sometimes see people just not feed their pets, or it's just something simple like their pets are bugging them and they throw something at them to go away, and I'm like, "Hey, what's the point of having a pet?" It's really, you shouldn't have a pet at that point. And if I see parents that do that to a pet or a kid, I was like, that's like unacceptable for me. There has to be other ways, right? Like
Mhm.
like I'm also a person that's like, you shouldn't let your kid get away with murder, right? If you have a kid and he's doing something wrong in public, you gotta stop that. You gotta explain to the kids, you can't do that here. And that's the thing I worry about, Lisa. Like, people our generation or in our periphery, they have kids. They could easily just be like that parent that just hands their kid an iPad. It's like, here you go. And
Mhm.
then, or they just do something, they throw a temper tantrum, they start stealing stuff from stores, and the parent's like, oh, that's fine. My kid's like that.
The
Don't be mean to my kid.
what's it called? The gentle parenting?
Ooh,
The
that doesn't work. In my opinion, that doesn't work either. So it's like there has to be a good median, right? You have to be a parent that's like doesn't have to always resort to violence, but not let your kid get away with murder, because you have to teach your kids what's acceptable and stuff like that. You have to teach your kids empathy. You have to teach your kids, how to be a good person, because it's not this whole world's not about you. The world is already pretty tough as it is. Do us a favor and do tell your kids to, care about others and stuff like that and not be so self centered. That being said, that's the end of this episode. But don't think that we talked entirely about the movie and his whole situation of his life. So do tune in soon for episode 2 of the Michael Jackson movie, where we dive more in depth about Michael and that horrible, horrible thing that is Joe Jackson's eyebrows. So please like and subscribe, and we'll see you soon. From Ken and Lisa. Bye.